Hello, welcome. We've had nothing but rain here for the last 3 weeks, so it cleared up today, sun's shining, it's nice and cool outside, so I'm gonna seize the opportunity. Anyway, I was dinking around on YouTube the other day looking up some knots, and I realized that a lot of the YouTube videos on must know or essential knots include, instructions on 5 to 10 knots, which to me seems like a lot. I mean, I love knots, I love rope, I love knowing lots of knots, learning lots of knots. I use lots of different knots when I'm out camping or in the woods, but that doesn't work for everybody. So what I want to do today is show you 2 very simple knots that will do everything you need. Before I get started though, I want to talk about 3 things real quickly that make a good knot. Number 1, it's got to be easy to tie. Number 2, it's got to stay tied and can't come undone until you untie it. And number 3, it can't bind up so tight that you can't get it untied. So the first knot I want to talk about is the half hitch. Actually, it's 2 half hitches together because 1 half hitch by itself isn't really very secure. So you will almost always use 2 of them together, hence the reason I call it 2 half hitches. The half hitch is used to basically just secure the end of the rope to any anchor point. So you could secure it to a post or a tree, tie down in your truck, a boat or a canoe or a guy line or whatever. So anyway, let me show you how to tie 2 half hitches. To tie the 2 half hitches, I'm just going to take this piece of rope, wrap it around this tree, and then I'm left with these 2 pieces of rope. This end is just going to stand here and do nothing, so I'm going to call this the standing end. And then this end is going to be doing all the work, going around and making the knot, so I'm going to call this the working end. So to tie the first half hitch, take the working end over the standing end, around the back, and then back up through this gap right here. And I'm going to take the working end back over this little piece of the working end, over the standing end, around the back, and then up through this gap right here. And then I'll pull it tight, snug that down to the tree, and now I have a very secure anchor point. I'm going to show that to you again, but this time in slow motion. I simply take the working end over the standing end, back around and underneath, and then up through this hole. And then I kind of pull that a little bit snug. Now I'm going to come back over this little piece of my working end, over the standing end, around the back, and up through this hole. And then there's my 2 half hitches. And then I just snug that down, and now this is secured to my anchor point. Now I want to point out a few things that make this knot so easy to use. First of all, let me give you some context about how simple the knot is itself. When I take the working end over the standing end, around the back, and then back up through here, if I were to pull that tight, all I have here is a simple overhand knot. This is the simplest knot on the planet. Okay, that's all we have. All I'm doing is going around and back up through a second time to make 2 of them together, and that forms my 2 half hitches. Now, let me show you a slightly different way to tie this. I don't have to go over, I can come under the working end and then back around and down through this gap. Okay, and then do that again, under, back around, and through this gap, snug that down, and I have 2 half hitches again. The other thing I can do is I can go over, around, and back through, and if you'll notice, to tie the 2 half hitches, I do it the same exact way, over, around, and back through. Well, if I forget, and this time I go under, which is opposite of the way I did the first knot, and back up around, and then down through, and tie those 2 together, I have a slightly different knot. I would refer to this as a lark's head. However, I can snug that down and pull it tight, and I still have a very secure knot, a very secure anchor point. So it doesn't matter really how you tie these 2 half hitches together, you're going to have a very secure anchor point. All right, now I want to go over just a handful of ways on how you could use these 2 half hitches. Let's say I wanted to kind of secure this or bundle up this little pile of wood here. I would go around my pile, just like I went around the tree, and I could come over. So this is my working end, this is my standing end right here. Go over and back through the gap, and I come around, go over, back through the gap, and cinch that down. Make sure this one's in there well. And then I can take the other end. This piece of cordage is a little bit too long, but you get the idea. Take the other end, go around the pile, treat it like one big tree. And again, I go over, back through here, over, back around and underneath, and pull that tight, nice and secure. And if this rope were short enough, or this piece of parachute cord was short enough, I could still do it, but I'd have a handle. I can lift my pile and off I go. Now imagine you got something kind of heavy that you need to drag. You take this, and again, we're going to go around this. If you can find somewhere along the way where there's a notch or something you can use it. But we're going to take the working end over the standing end, over the standing end, back through the gap, over the standing end, back through the gap, and I'm going to cinch this down real tight so that then I can use it to pull. All right, so you secured your line to the heavy item and you're pulling it, but the rope is kind of hurting your hand, so you want to make some kind of handle. Once again, 2 half hitches work just fine. Get you your handle. You take your rope around it just like you did the tree, working in over the standing end, around the back and up through. Do it again. Pull that tight, and now you've got a handle to use. All right, now I want to show you how you can use 2 half hitches in conjunction with 2 other half hitches to tie the ends, the 2 ends of a piece of rope together. This isn't the ideal knot for this, but again, you only know 2 knots. This will work, and it works just fine. You just have to be kind of understand what you're doing. So I'm going to put this end to the side for now. I'm going to take this end, and I'm going to tie kind of a loose 2 half hitches in it. So imagine that I've wrapped the rope around something. I have my working end. I'm going to go over and back through, and then I'm going to do the same thing, over and back through. And now I have my 2 half hitches. I'm just going to kind of snug them up a little bit, but I'm leaving an open loop here. Okay, now I'm going to take this other end that I want to tie to this end, and I'm going to wrap it around. So now this piece has become my tree trunk, if you will. I'm going to wrap it around. This is my standing end. This is my working end. I'm going to go over, around the back, and then back up through that hole. And I'm going to do that again. I go over, around the back, back up through the hole. And now I pull that snug up against this loop. Tighten everything up. And then I do the same with this side. Tighten everything up, and there you have it. That's not going anywhere. For those of you familiar with knots, especially fishing knots, this is a very similar concept to the uni knot, but it will hold, and all you need to know are the 2 half hitches. Okay, here's another little trick you can do with 2 half hitches. What you can do, I'm going to lay this down like this. You can kind of see. I'm going to make a snare loop essentially. So anytime you need a sliding loop, again, this isn't the ideal knot for this, but it will work. So we're going to take, this is the standing end right here. This is the working end. I'm going to go over and back through. I'm going to kind of pinch that so it stays there and leaves my loop. I'm going to go over and back through again. And then I pull those 2 half hitches tight onto this working end. So now what I have is a loop that will slide. So you'll see this slides, makes it bigger, or in the case of a snare, an animal or something would put its head through there, and then this would slide and get smaller, just like any sliding loop should do. Another way you can use the 2 half hitches is, let's say you needed to tow a car and your tow strap, either you didn't have one or it broke. You can take one end of the rope and go around the hitch ball like this, just like we did the tree trunk. And I'm going to do the over, back up through, and again I go over, back up through, And now I've got a line secured to my hitch, and I can take the other end and go around some anchor point on the other vehicle. So we'll go around this tow hook, and actually I'm going to go around it this way so you can get a better view, but I go over and back through, over, around and under and back through, and now I can tow. Now, one issue with towing with something like this is it may not be quite strong enough. So what you can do, this is a little trick. Basically, you're just going to fold the rope in half and treat the doubled up rope as one piece. So what we'll do is take the two pieces together, go around, treat this as one piece. So I go over and then back up through here, go over again, back up through here. There are my two half hitches. And then I'll take the other end. Again, I've got the two pieces together, but I'll treat it as one. So I go around, over, back up through, over, back up through, and there are my two half hitches, and now I've doubled up the rope, made it twice as strong. All right, I brought my dog Cody into the mix. Another way that you can use two half hitches comes in real handy. If you go camping and either you lose the dog leash or it breaks or you forgot it or whatever, you just take any piece of rope or cordage, slip it through the ring on their collar. Once again, I'm going to do under and through. Then I'm going to do under and through, pull it tight, and now I've got a good leash that Cody wants to chew on, but now I've got a good leash. And if I want to tie Cody up to a tree or something, I guess he's going to run off, I just take the other end, wrap it around the tree, slip in two half hitches, and he's secured. Okay, that pretty much covers the two half hitches. Hopefully you can see how simple it is to tie and how useful it can be. The second knot I want to show you is called a Truckers Hitch, and that's a knot that's used to cinch things down nice and tight. So since it will always need an opposite anchor point, the opposite anchor point will always be done with two half hitches. The Truckers Hitch is pretty simple to tie. It can be a little bit tricky to use. It's really just a clever variation on the half hitch, but I'll show that to you now. I'm just going to use two half hitches to secure this end to this tree. Okay, to tie the Truckers Hitch, my objective with the Truckers Hitch is to take this line and tighten it down. So first thing I'm going to do is wrap this cordage around this tree. Now I'm going to take this line right here and I'm going to make a loop, just a simple loop like that. I'm going to take this end and curl it where it goes over top of this end. Okay, very simple, and then pinch that and hold it. Now, I'm going to make a bite or a bend. A bite like this is called a bend. I'm going to make a bite and I'm going to come over this and back under. And if you look closely, essentially what you're tying is another half hitch. You're just not running your line all the way through. You're running this little loop through, grab that little loop, and we pull that tight. That right there I would call a slip half hitch. Okay, so now I have this loop. I'm going to come over here and grab the working end. I'm going to run it through the loop. And then I pull the working end. Now I've created a pulley system. I pull the working end to tighten up this line. Once I have this as snug as I want it, I need to pinch right here at the pinch point. I have to tie this off so that it doesn't slip. If I let go, it slips. So I cinch it down where I want it. I pinch right here, and I'm basically going to tie another slip half hitch. So I'm going to make a bite. There's my bite. I'm going to treat that as a single piece. I'm going to go over, around, back up through, and then just pull that tight, and that holds it right there. All right, now I've got it all tied. Now you need to see how to untie it. Since this right here, the slip half hitch that's holding it all together, is a slip half hitch, all you have to do is pull on this working end and it lets that knot out. Okay? Now you have to pull the working end out of this loop. This was the first loop you made, the first slip half hitch you made. And all you have to do to take that one out is pull on your working end and that comes right out. Now, note, I'm going to make this slip half hitch again, the first one in the process. So I curl, come over, and I pinch. Take a bite around the back and up through, and pull that tight. I cannot start cranking down on this line from this direction until I have fed the other working end back through here. Because once I start pulling on this, it pulls this loop out. So you have to run the working line back through that loop before you start cinching it down. So this example was a ridge line or a clothesline. Now let me show you some other examples where the trucker's hitch is really handy. All right, so I show you how to use the trucker's hitch to make a really tight ridge line. The other way I really use this knot a lot is on my guy lines, if I'm stringing up a tarp or the rain fly on a tent or anything like that. So I'll take one end and go to my attachment point on the tarp or the tent rain fly, and again I go through the loop or the grommet or whatever and make 2 half hitches. So that just secures one end to the tent. And then I come down to my stake point and I drive my stake in. Now my guy line goes around the stake, and if you recall on the trucker's hitch, I'll take the standing end and I'll make a loop from the working end side where I curl and go over the top, and I pinch there, and then I make another loop on this kind of working end side of it and go around and up and through, and then pull that tight. And then I take the end of the working end and go through my loop, and then I just pull that tight to get my guy line where I want it. Now I've got it where I want it, I'll pinch here, I make a loop, and I can go over this way, I can go over this way, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go over this way, around, back underneath, pull my loop through, pull that tight, and it holds it in place. And all I have to do when I'm done is pull that. And what I like about using a trucker's hitch here is if overnight the tarp or the tent happens to sag and the line gets loose, so a lot of times it's easy enough just to lift up the stake and tighten it up. But if the stake is in really hard ground, it's not so easy to lift up, and it's also not so easy to drive into the ground again. Also, if you have your guy line tied to something you really can't move, like a really heavy rock or a big log or a tree or a bush or something, then having this really easily adjustable line to tighten things up is pretty convenient. Here I am stringing up my hammock. So I use this kind of webbing for my hammock, but that end is secured to an anchor point using 2 half hitches. And as you can see, I just run this down through kind of the hammock loop here, and I want to be able to pull this pretty tight, and I want to be able to adjust it. So again, I'm going to take this kind of standing end, make an overhand loop and pinch that, and then come underneath with a loop and then secure that off. There I have a loop. I'll come back through. I'll make my loop just a little bit bigger. I'm going to come back through, and then I can pull that tight, as tight as I want it. Once I have it where I want it, pinch this, okay? And I'm going to do it from this side. I'm going to take, let me pinch it this way. I'm going to take a loop or a bite like this and go over like this, and make that bigger, it'll be easier to see. Go over, and now I'm going to switch hands so you can see a little better. I've got this little loop, little hole or gap right there. My loop is going to go back up through that, like so, and then I just pull that tight, and now this is secure but easily adjustable. Here's another way that the trucker's hitch comes in really handy. Let's say that I want to secure my motorcycle here in the back of my pickup truck. It's not in the back now, I know. I didn't feel like getting it loaded up there just for this, but just hopefully you can use your imagination. So what I would do is simply secure one end of the rope to the handlebars, take the other end down to an attachment point, a tie down in the back of the truck or whatever, and get it wrapped around here. Again, on the standing end, make an overhand loop where this end, the end I'm pulling towards, goes back over the standing end, and then take a bite and go around and underneath, and then pull that tight. And then take the working end through the loop, cinch it down nice and tight. When I get it where I want it, pinch right here, make a loop, And this time I'm going to go under and back down through. Again, it's just a half hitch, but a slip half hitch because it's got the loop in it, and now it's secured. Okay, that does it. Hopefully you can see how you can pretty much do everything you need in an outdoor type setting with just those 2 knots. The 2 half hitches together and then the Truckers hitch. I hope you found this both informative and enjoyable. I enjoy making it. Thanks for watching.